So I'll call the meeting to order, and I guess if we're doing a roll call vote, it's just you and me, right, Mark?
Yep.
So
Here.
great, and I'm also here, so fantastic. I did not have any comments on the minutes. We might as well just approve those unless you had comments, Mark.
No, I'm fine with them, so I'll move to approve the minutes. I believe it's February 12th and March 12th.
I think that's right. Can I second and approve? Sure,
Yeah,
second, and then we'll vote.
Aye.
Aye, all right, great. Chris, how are you?
Good, how are you? It's good to see you all.
What's been happening?
So in terms of updates, I'll start with Office of Economic Development. Elizabeth, I think thanks in part to your efforts and Representative Cataldo, he was able to speak with the Executive Office of Administration and Finance and have them approve the $250,000 earmark. So we received a contract from EOED on that, and we're just waiting for a countersigned copy. We also reviewed with them, based on Megan's efforts, and our request to capture pre-contract settlement costs for our wastewater assessment at MCI Concord. So they agreed to do that, and so the agreement is a little bit bisected between our pre-contract expenses and our forward-looking expenses. So it's about $27,000 claimed there, and then the rest is allocated for expenditure up through June 30th.
That doesn't change though the allocation that was going towards wastewater though, right?
Right.
Okay, it just would pre-contract versus post.
Yep.
So how much does that leave us with? It's 27,000 that we need to make up for.
Yeah, it's about 223,000 outstanding, or that we have to spend this fiscal year.
Okay, got it. That's great. Good news. I know Megan, I already talked to you about this, and yay. Anything else from DCAM, MassDOT, anything else from you, Chris?
There's been a ongoing kind of effort to get our public works and consulting staff on campus to do this work, this kind of assessment of the wastewater facility, and it's just been a long time going back and forth with DCAM and I think the DOC and on the agreement for access. And so I think some progress has been made on that, but you know, nothing takes the amount of time you think it should. And so that's been a little bit of a hiccup. And I hope to have a better update, you know, at the next meeting, but I just want to make sure you're aware that
so they haven't even gotten in to start the work, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've gotten on site, is my understanding.
And we need to have it done by June 30th.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether Alan was going to be able to join us today or not. I mentioned this meeting to him, but it occurred to me that maybe it's time to ask DCAM a little bit more forcefully to move this along.
We did have Alan and you were on a call with DCAM, I think it was like the week before the 250th. And there has been some email correspondence this week, and so I'm not 100% sure where that we landed on that one, but I'll see. I just wanted to flag it here, but yeah, I think if it's not resolved pretty soon, it might be time to kind of level up. So that's why I appreciate having this subcommittee to talk to.
I think if we needed to approach Adam even.
Right.
Okay, so it sounds like you guys are already making that initial step to reach out to them, but if it goes nowhere, you'll let us know and we can try to bring in more resources for that. That's frustrating.
Yeah, there's another coordination call on Friday, so let's go with if we don't understand it by Friday.
Then we'll level up.
Is there some sort of hiccup like in the contract, or is there something we're not agreeing to or they're not agreeing to in the access agreement, or are they just not getting it to you?
I think it's just been, kind of like redlining details back and forth about what are the specifics of the test, and then we get it to them, and then it just like takes a little bit longer to get back.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
going through our town council?
No, it's not, is it? It might be. You know what, Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I don't have,
DCAM's deputy general counsel and the counsel for Westland and Sampson, as I understand it. Who's doing the work, so they're supposed to be licensed to go on site on our behalf. So they're, you know, at this point, they're getting held up, and I don't know anything about exactly how much work they have, but obviously if they can't get started, they can't get finished.
Okay, well, keep us updated.
will do.
Not great. Well, we got one problem solved and we have another one.
Yeah,
So Alan's not here, but MassDOT, anything from them?
There have been some, conversations between, like, so not exactly MassDOT, I guess, but our agency team had a meeting, I think last week with, one of their transportation sub has been meeting with our, public works folks and our public works consultants at Stantec. So there have been, further conversations to make sure we're in alignment there. But I don't think there's been another MassDOT conversation. I think whenever there is, we really try to loop you all in on that.
Yeah. What does that mean then, be in alignment? Just like, yeah, what is
Well,
that?
I mean, so agency has, you know, a short time to do this work and to vision for, to help. Not vision, but like collect the vision of the community and present it back to the community is their role really. And obviously transportation is a big part of that, and so, they're, you know, trying to get up to speed and meet with our staff and our consultant to, understand the work that's been done in the past, the different options that have come up. And, I think that transportation is gonna be a big part of the upcoming workshop. On the 30th, along with these other factors, there was a meeting last night with the Climate Action Committee, and there were some, the chair of the Transportation Advisory Committee was there. And I'd say both of those committees are pretty in alignment about their vision for transportation at this site, which is really like a human focused. They're looking at like reduction of vehicular traffic and discuss that at the meeting. So, I think we're just at a point where people are sharing their ideas and sharing them with agencies so they can kind of collect them all and talk about it as a community.
Okay, got it. But there hasn't been anything more with MassDOT, so these
No,
are kind of our ideas, what we'd like, but MassDOT hasn't weighed in on any of them. And it sounds like the 30th, we'll get a chance to hear all of that. More in depth.
I think the MassDOT timeline is really different from our timeline, so
Yeah.
I think we have.
Sorry, I get to hear what you guys have been talking about with the transportation committee.
Yeah, I think we're just trying to get our consultant team up to speed on the community. Various stakeholder interests, so that they can, when they're presenting things to you all, they have a sense of the values, you know, and
Sure.
how to integrate those in the proposals.
Okay, that makes sense. Chris, anything from else from Mass Historical or anything?
Nothing from Mass Historical, but the state legislature, yes, the governor filed her budget bill, I think in January. The House Ways and Means finally released their budget, I think last week. And there's over, I think, 1,600 proposed budget amendments to it. So they're sorting through it, and they're going to start their public hearing. I don't know if it's this week or next week. But I do see budget amendment 251 filed by Representative Gentile to pack the 250 earmark. And I'm just going through and looking to see if there are any other I'm not seeing now any other budget amendments, but I will verify that.
So that's
Well-
great news.
But I have a question about, doesn't PAC the 250 mean that he's requesting extended authorization to spend the money that is already earmarked for 2025? That's not new money.
That's correct. Yep, the PAC seeks authorization to spend it through June 30th, 2026.
Okay, so this is.
Not new money though.
Yeah, not new money, so I thought we were asking him to submit a request for new money. I mean, it's great that we're also asking him to enable us to spend the money that was already appropriated as well over a longer time frame. That's great.
Yes, so Mark, I'm not seeing it on the website yet, but I just need to verify where that is. That request was made to Representative Gentile.
Yeah,
So we just need to find it in the
What about a request to Senator Barrett?
we have open communications with his office, and we're still, I think those communications were delayed a little bit with the 250th, both on our end and on his office. And so we'll pick that up again and check in with his office to see where that is.
Yeah, I just don't want to miss their budget deadline, because I know Simon mentioned that that might be a better route than Gentile.
okay,
Yeah, and who knows when we'll even find out, when are they even gonna get it done, that we would know we could use that money next year. I mean, it seems unlikely that it's gonna change anything for
Mhm.
us. Okay,
yeah,
yep,
okay. So,
Um,
I mean, that
yeah.
brings us kind of directly to Article 33.
yep. I don't know if you wanna put it up or if people just wanna
Yeah, I
comment.
do.
Okay,
I'll just share my screen, share, then switch. So this is the draft that I had, distributed earlier. Basically, the request here is to ask town meeting to appropriate 250,000 from free cash. For the purposes of evaluating feasibility of acquiring the MCI Concord wastewater treatment facility and general planning purposes associated with MCI Concord closure. Sorry. In this inception phase where you don't know which app you're looking at. All right. This. I'm just gonna do it in edit mode. You can see that okay, right?
yep,
Okay, so the first slide is really just a recap of how we've allocated the monies that we already received in 25, noting that we do have $40,000 that we haven't really specifically allocated to anything yet, assuming that the agency contract comes in at its amount, we would still have that left over, which is good. If we did get a pack on either one of these, then we could probably access that for something in the future. I probably wouldn't say that at town meeting because we would know whether that had happened by then. Just, taking a moment to express gratitude for the fact that we were doing that and remind town meeting that, because we'll be talking about this in June, but I was proposing that I would present this to the finance committee May 1st, which is next Thursday night, so we'll know what we know next week. And nothing more than that, but the release was delayed quite a bit, which is why we're in a pinch to get this funding used. And we have a really good chance of losing it if we don't. I'm gonna remind people about the hopefully just completed public outreach session that we will have had, and the fact that they can follow along for any new ones at that URL, that we would spend, that we have spent the money on wastewater system planning, but there's quite a bit more work to do there, and that we expanded the scope of the local traffic study. Then going on, to just remind the town meeting that, and the finance committee, that we haven't really spent any town funds yet. We haven't appropriated anything. We've been using the state's money. That there is uncertainty and even unlikelihood that we will get any more money from the state in FY26. And if we don't have some funding that we can deploy under our own control, we will simply be unable to enter into any contracts at all. So the proposed, just pointing back to what we're thinking about, we have $100,000 of ARPA funding that is.
Yeah. Is that supposed to be 2025? Must be spent by December 31st, 2025?
No,
The ARPA, we have until 2026 to spend it?
That's correct. But
December,
yeah,
December 2025?
2026 for our.
Oh, December 2026, okay.
yeah, so we would of course, I mean, that means that we really have, if we can get zoning done in $100,000, then we have that part, which is the back end of the agency consulting contract. So we've already committed that essentially, and that's secure. However, the reason we have 250,000 there is we're, and I hope I'm correct here. So this is why we were just talking to you, Chris, about making sure that it's in there, but when the state that we've requested an earmark for, and that it's been submitted, if it hasn't been, then we'll change this in time. But the status is unknown until the state budget passes. We know the state budget won't pass until June sometime, which will be after town meeting. So we really don't know whether or not we're going to get that, even if it is requested, until after the time we would have had to decide this issue.
I think on this one, I mean, I did send it to the representative.
Okay.
So, I mean, is that how we're calling it submitted? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How he weighed it with other things, or how he understood it, or put it in. I can't speak to, but
Yeah.
we did
Right.
write to him,
Okay.
with this request,
Right.
so,
So we'll keep track of that and
yeah, we certainly, but,
I'll speak to it, on May 1st with the best information that we have so far.
yeah,
And that could be, if we find out that it's not going in, then we go the Senator Barrett route, and if
we're doing that anyway,
yeah,
but
we're
yeah,
doing that anyway.
Yeah.
But the point being that the town meeting Article 33 is a request that we can control and use as needed. And it could easily turn out to be the only funding that we have to support this. And so the next slide is meant to try to show what kinds of things we would intend to do with that money. Additional public outreach. In other words, once we hit June 25, the agency contract has been completed for those phases. We don't have any funding for any additional public outreach, even if the public wants that. It is the wastewater system planning again. So interconnecting, for example, the wastewater treatment plant at MCI to the town system would need to be planned, and we could use funding for that. The traffic studies and input into the Route 2 rotary redesign, to the extent that we need any support for that. That's not funded anywhere. Legal support for MCI site options. In other words, if we come to a proposal and we wanted to negotiate with the state over acquiring some portion of this property, that would be what we would. We don't have any legal budget for that. diligence studies. For example, if we thought that any part of the site that isn't the wastewater treatment plant was interesting to the town to own and needed to do any kind of deeper assessments of those things, those could cost money. And for comparison, I asked Megan and Elisa, sorry, to just pull up what we sort of spent on MBTA communities, and the numbers that were $45,000 in direct consulting costs and 1,000 hours of staff and planning board effort just to get the zoning part of MBTA communities done. So I think that given how complicated the MCI process is, it's not a terribly big ask. And then wrapping it up with the motion. So this last chart is the only one that's slightly different from what I had previously sent out for people to comment on. And I'd be happy to hear your thoughts.
I think it looks good and it makes a lot of sense that we have to get the money allocated before we know what happens with the budget, for the state. I guess I had thought that the 250 included the 100,000 for zoning and then 150 additional but looking at this, it looks like the 250 doesn't include the zoning, that you have that as a separate ARPA
Right.
funding, and then the 250 is separate. I guess
Yeah.
I mentioned this to Megan. I mean, how fixed is that ARPA funding for zoning, and should we ask for more money, see if we get it so that we could use the ARPA money for something else?
Well, I think that the
Sorry, ask for more money from like Senator Barrett.
Yeah. The ARPA money had to be committed to a project by last December. And it turned out that the result of the RFP was that, you know, agencies said they could do the zoning phase of that RFP for 99.
Right, we're not under contract with them.
We're not
next
under
year.
contract yet?
No,
Okay,
we got quotes, we wanted to know like what the ballpark
okay,
amount would be for the tasks that the committee identified, or the board had identified.
okay.
And it did come in for that, which helped us with our planning. I think that lined up that way. And so we have appropriated the ARPA funds for this purpose, has to be spent by the end of December. If we don't spend that money, I think, Chris, maybe you could speak to where it goes, right? It doesn't go like back in a pot to be reused for something else, but it could maybe be reappropriated to another project that still needs to be spent by the end of December. So, I mean, Chris, I don't know, that's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, the US Treasury Department required us to have a plan specifically for all our ARPA funds by December 31, 2024, to be fully expended by 12/31/2026. So we have, at least per their current guidelines, the authority to transfer money between ARPA projects. There is, they've also announced enhanced compliance efforts. So there's a slight risk in doing that, but under the Treasury regulations, we're allowed to do that.
I guess I'm just operating from the idea that why not ask for more? We might get nothing. Obviously, from the state, it looks like we're gonna get nothing, but if Senator Barrett, if we ask him for 350 and we have 100 grand extra to put towards another ARPA thing, then great. That's just, I don't see what we have to lose by asking for more. Dan, I see you on here. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
I've been tracking it with Mark. It's funny. I mean, I can appreciate your rationale because it's tough to go back to the well, right?
Mhm.
On the other hand, and this is probably more a personal thing, sort of the inclination is to sort of do a good job of knowing what we need. And then, and I understand that in this scale and complexity of this project, it's really hard to predict.
Right.
So, in that respect, and you combine that with it's tough to go back for a second, then maybe it does make more sense to ask for more.
Well, especially if we're saying we're asking from 250 for free cash, we have the 100,000 from ARPA, we have to, my understanding is that even if we ask for it, we have to have another source available. We have to have that money available somehow to spend if they don't grant it to us. So we have that, right? But if they do give it to us, then we have that money for something else. I mean, I
I
don't
think
see the disadvantage, but
Yeah, well, the other part of it is, and trying to sidestep the politics of it, I'm about to say, but we don't really know what's going to happen at the federal level, right? Or that could potentially trickle down in the impact it could have on the state. So in that regard, maybe it makes more sense to be take a more conservative, meaning ask for more.
I think you're always better asking for more, assuming that if they have to bring it down, it'll be brought down by, you know. That's my thought. It sounds like we have the 350 sitting there in free cash and ARPA, ask for 350 from Barrett. Again, it likely
Are
we're
you
gonna.
thinking, oh, sorry, are you looking to ask for, I mean, I think the select board article is the 250, is that? That's
Yeah.
the number that, for that ask, right? Is
Yeah.
that-
Yeah,
mean-
I'm thinking of it like a $350,000 budget that has, of which 100,000 we already have in hand in effect. So we have the ARPA money, barring some clawback from the federal government, under the rules that we understand right now, we have that money and we can spend it. The risk, as I see it, is that we don't have any money beyond that, and getting this done for 100,000 would be extremely difficult. So I was thinking in terms of that, and by saying that we're going to essentially ask the state for additional funds and spend their money first if we get them, we would, and we're asking town meeting for the same amount that we're asking the state, so we're trying to build a budget that goes to 250 beyond the zoning work for FY 26. That seems to me a pretty straightforward approach. If we say, well, we asked the state for 350, but we're only willing to put up 250, I think that starts to sound a little
We're
different.
not. We're willing to put up 350, but just only 250 in free cash and 100,000 with ARPA.
Yeah,
So I guess I'm agreeing with you that I think the ask should be 250 from free cash, but the ask for Barrett should be for 350.
yeah,
That's what we actually think this money
yeah.
will be.
we would-
I was just going to say the wild card in this, I think, is once we get, theoretically, we're going to get to consensus on a scenario or a couple of scenarios, and $100,000 in and of itself, if the tool to ensure we get what we want, it will be through zoning and land use, then perhaps that's a reasonable number. But what concerns me is we really don't know what it's going to take to both achieve consensus and then also come up with some mechanism, whether it's zoning, land use regulations, or something else. Could be some preliminary work on design or whatever. It could be a whole bunch of things in my mind. And so that to me is a wild card. And that's if we successfully get the town to wrap their head around what we think is the best use, and then we don't have the ability to actually craft something that ensures we're successful. I know, Elizabeth, this is a sensitive topic, or has been for you and some others. That would be my concern. And I can't tell you what that would take yet, because we haven't really got feedback on how much pushback and there's going to be at the residence level to say, yeah, this is a good idea.
So are you arguing
Yeah.
for asking for more from free cash?
No, I'm not. I just think that I guess what I'm saying, I'd much rather, and I think I speak for most people on the call, I'd much rather that the money come from the state and or other means than us, the town.
I mean, if we're maximally successful here and we get an appropriation from the state at the 250 level, and we've already backed that up with with an appropriation from free cash, then we really have more than we necessarily expect to spend. Because once we've appropriated it from free cash, it's available to be used. The issue that I see is that we simply can't move forward with any kind of contracts if we don't have some ability to pay for it. So I recognize that, the timing of all of this is quite tricky because, we need to talk about it in next week to have a hearing about what we're doing and try and lay out the options, even as we say, by the way, we're going to be, halfway to trying to get the community to agree with options. I mean, I even anticipate that next Thursday night, standing there trying to talk about this, I'm going to have a much better sense of where the community is on this because of what's occurred the day before at the big public forum. We're gonna know, are they completely confused? Is it gonna take a long time? I'm very concerned, and what I think the, primary use here is that if we need to have an extended period of public engagement in order to bring the public to the point where they understand the options enough to really be comfortable with some kind of solution, whatever that solution turns out to be, we may need additional, public engagement support to do that, and we're gonna run out of money for that in basically, on June 30th.
So I totally agree with you, and I think that my response to the presentation is that it's great and that we should go forward with it. I was just moving it on to the Senator
Yeah.
Barrett.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't have any comments on your presentation. I thought my only question was whether that ARPA money was 2025 or 2026.
Yeah.
And I think the next discussion, and maybe it's in a conversation with Senator, I don't know, is why not say to Senator Barrett 350, because there's a legitimate argument that we think that we're gonna spend 350 because we're asking for 250 from free cash, and we have 100 in ARPA, which can go to something else. So we just say the number 350 to him, and
Okay.
but I agree with you on your presentation. I think it's great.
One suggestion, I think, could be an important point regarding, the slide where you mentioned the transportation planning
Mhm.
a little bit. It might be useful in the hearing to mention that MassDOT's timing for rotary redesign is 1.5 years, I think they said.
Yeah,
And that we're gonna need funds to be able to respond to and work with them throughout their process. It's not like we can front load it now because they're not really ready,
yeah,
So in Concord's best interest for the community as a whole and for this development, we're gonna need to be funded and able to articulate our needs for both, connecting both sides of Concord through this and making sure it works for the development.
okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Oh, Elisa, did you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that just in terms of, providing a little bit of background and kind of support, especially for the maybe additional public engagement. And the need for it is that just for the MBTA zoning effort alone, they apparently had about 50 public engagement, events, coffees, kind of open houses, different things like that. So just trying to put it out there that there was quite a bit of engagement, related to that. And that was just a single use, that was just housing kind of overlaid on an already existing zoning district. And this is this is quite a bit more complex. So I just wanted to kind of give that background, and if that comes up, during the presentation as, questions on that, just wanted to give that feedback.
Yeah, good point.
I think that lasted more than a year too, that public engagement process. Really, that comment sort of by way of saying, looking ahead to if we I think it's a pretty aggressive schedule to consider the idea that we might even be ready with zoning by the 26th town meeting in April, because that's already essentially 10 months from the town meeting that would be approving this. And that zoning would need to be ready several months before the town meeting actually occurs, which basically gives us 6 or 7 months to try to come up with a vision and zone it. I'm skeptical that that will occur.
Me too. I think that deadline is, personally, I think the 2026 deadline is not enough time for the zoning,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure why we're rushing it, because I don't think there's a need to, but.
Yeah. We don't need to.
Yeah,
But the point is that if we don't have, so now
Maybe
if we're
more money.
talking about the 27th town meeting. Instead of the 26th town meeting, then that ARPA money is spent and gone. By December of 26, and if we needed support for that, so that could be. Another reason why funds that don't expire, because if we do an appropriation from free cash, that doesn't expire until we cancel that appropriation. So we can carry that forward as long as we need to be able to do this, and that's part of the rationale there.
I think it's very compelling, and I think the fact that we haven't spent any of our own money yet is also very compelling, so. Compelling to me as someone who wants to spend the money on this, so I don't know, you'll have to see what
Yeah.
the reaction is from other people. Any other comments?
Okay.
I wonder, about the presentation, if this is the last finance committee public hearing on the first.
Mhm.
And the finance committee was gracious to change it. They originally had an earlier hearing, but, we kind of. The town manager asked to move it so we could have these conversations.
Mhm.
But it is the last day that they would be weighing in on it.
Yeah,
So it's not, just to say, there isn't like, well, let's find out more about exactly what type of planning you're gonna do and come back, And so, Mark, you'll do the presentation and, just thinking, would it be helpful or possible to have some advisory board members at the hearing to, to show kind of alignment, like the advisory board was appointed by the select board to advise, and this subcommittee is working on this specific component, and, I don't know if it's appropriate to have a vote, or if there's how to kind of tie in this subcommittee's work and the advisory board's work, which is made up of a, real variety of folks with different skill sets to look at this. So I think that goes a long way with the finance committee. I mean, I don't know, but I think to say, this is, there's a group of your peers that are working on this and have experience in this industry and feel that this is a good idea, and that's why we're bringing it to you, like how to get that point across.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe Dan, what do you think about you being there, or Patrick?
Yeah, definitely me or Patrick and maybe Scott.
Okay. So maybe what we do is if we think that this basically hits the points, we could distribute it to the board and mention that it's gonna be heard. I have no idea what the finance committee is planning to do in terms of timing, since whether they're gonna take this up first or whether we're gonna wait through all the enterprises and,
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe I can ask that question on Thursday night.
It's not a bad idea, though, because if they come back with questions, you have some support there, Mark, so.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we have a regular advisory board meeting until
Before that, we do.
Yeah.
after this meeting.
Elizabeth, would you attend as well? Or
I
Lee?
can, sure, if
Yeah,
you think it's
seems-
useful.
I think to Megan's point, I think it would be, especially the conversations you've been having with the state.
What time is it on the first?
So
7 p.m. Okay. Do you wanna, how should we do this then? Send out something to Scott and Patrick, Dan, or?
Yeah, let me see if Patrick's gonna be in town. And let me check with, I can check with Scott
Sounds good.
and, yeah,
Um. And Megan, you're gonna be there?
Yeah, I'm gonna be
Okay.
there.
Sounds good. All right, so Mark, you got a bunch of backup. If
Yeah,
you,
great.
you may not need us, so I hope you
Yeah.
don't. But like I said, I
Well-
think it's a compelling argument, but
I think so. You know, the finance committee and some of their discussions about free cash use has been, you know, talking about why aren't we seeing more planning? And what we're asking for is the money for planning.
yeah,
Okay.
great.
So I appreciate the support. I'm gonna actually move that the Legal and Government Affairs Subcommittee recommend this presentation to the Finance Committee.
I will second that.
Do you want to take a roll call?
Sure, roll call vote. Mark
Aye.
and Elizabeth, aye. That's great.
Okay.
You have so much power. This is
very
fantastic.
efficient.
Your Highness,
Um,
thank you.
That's great. I think the only other thing on the agenda is public comment unless anyone had anything else.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether Linda has anything to say.
Either Linda,
Either Linda.
anyone have anything? Oh, Linda, do you have something?
No, I don't.
Oh.
Thanks.
Saw you take mute off and I thought she had something, but no. I don't see anything else. So Carol and Linda, if you guys are, the other Linda, if you're good, then I will entertain a motion and we will get all this work done.
Adjourn.